Hello. Okay, so this is the second part of Maya for 2D artists. This part we are going to cover actually blocking out a scene, rendering it out, and then you can use it to paint over in Photoshop. It's a really easy way, obviously, to make correct perspective for concepting. It makes it a whole lot quicker. You can get some interesting perspectives out because you can actually manipulate your camera. You can compose it really easily, your screenshots. So you're not kind of faffing around in Photoshop, not really knowing what to be doing for your concepting. So let's get started. I'm just going to open up Maya here. And my background, I did that, as I said in the last video, and was done in this method as well. If you haven't already seen the first video, make sure you check that out. And it's really handy as it lets you know just how to actually navigate the scene. And we built our own custom toolbar, which is actually this one that we created together. So we'll add to this if we need to. And as you'll see, okay, Maya's open now. I'll just close this box, the attribute editor. And I'm going to try and kind of mock this up as fast as possible because I really want to make sure I don't make these videos too long, and you can take your own time and go in and do a bit more detail than I'm going to do. But I'm actually going to be using a concept that my friend Ivan has done, who is wanting these videos. And I'll just bring that up. I'm using dual monitors, so you'll see me going onto the other screen a lot. So here's the concept that Ivan did, and it's just a really simple sketch. It really helps if you do this sort of thing, just so you have a general idea of what you're wanting to create. So here we've got some lampposts and some buildings, and I mean, he's kept them very geometric, which is going to help us a lot. And then when he comes to concept it in Photoshop, he can go in and add all these details in and actually see the style and visual style that he's wanting to go for the actual final mocked up scene. So here we've got some blues and we've got some warmer colors here, and I'll show you good ways of rendering that out so you can even mimic that, which makes your life even easier in Photoshop. Okay, so I'm going to have this on my other screen so I can always refer to it. Let's get started. So first of all, I'm going to start with the basic shapes. I'm going to start with just blocking out the main ones and just trying to get some perspective in. And as you can see, the camera's in a 1-point perspective here. But we can do some more interesting stuff with that. Okay, so we'll start with the bigger buildings. So here I'm just going to start creating the cubes and press 5 and you're into the solid mode. Okay, so as you can see, it's already on the grid, which is really helpful. So I'm going to duplicate that instead of creating a new one so then I can get it on top. So have it selected in object mode, make sure you're in object mode, Control D, and then W, and you've got your pivot, your move tool. And you don't need to be too accurate with this. The trick with this is more speed than anything. So, okay, oh, I pressed R there to scale. And this one above looks a bit more cubic to me, so I'm going to non-uniform scale. I'm pressing spacebar, and then spacebar in my front view, and then F, and that zooms in, so then I can pivot around that. I'm going to press 5, so I can see the boxes, W, move tool, and I can just place that on. I don't need to be too accurate. I really want to make sure I'm concepting this as fast as possible. So that's me back in my perspective view, and I can manipulate that. Maybe leaving a bit of a lip here, I think it looks like in the concept. And then just Control D again, and bring it up. Again, you can see how accurate you are when you look in these views. And this one seems to have a bit of an overhang. It seems to be a bit more shallow, actually. So actually, you know, I'm going to select the face because I've already lined it up, so this will make it easier. Select the face, W, move tool. Looks a bit more like that, I'd say. Press to select this face. You can extrude this one out. Well, this one looks like it's back, actually. Move this one back. Move this one back. And they seem to be propped up by some sort of supports underneath, so I might not add them in. I might add them in. We'll see later. Okay, the next one, it looks, it's good to keep it as geometric as possible for this. So object mode again, object mode. And now see how my center pivot, my pivot is no longer in the center. And then this is when this tool comes in really handy. Center pivot, it makes it much simpler. Okay, Control D. Line that up again. Press F. There we go. Make sure you're moving the arms and not the center. Okay, because of the way he's done the perspective, it can be a bit difficult to see. I'm going to uniform scale this. Move this back. Looks a bit like this. And it looks like to me that there's, if I just bring this over, it looks to me like there's a sort of edge loop around here, like it kind of goes in, I think, unless those are supports. I'm gonna assume those are supports actually, and it's actually overhanging on this one. Okay. So it's kind of, you know, it's actually exactly this one, but rotated the other way, I think. So I'm gonna delete this, select this, press delete, select this, Control D, move it up, line it up, and then I'm going to show you something I didn't show you the other video. If you press E and you're on the rotate tool, now you can see on here, this is your axes. You might not be able to see. If you want to switch off the grid, show grid. There you go. And here you can see my axes down in the bottom left. And we can rotate it, instead of doing it free, like just rotating it and guessing the angle, if we want exactly maybe a 90-degree angle or a 180-degree, depending on the shape, you can do it here in the channel box. And the way you'll know which axes you're on is by referring to this. Another way, if you forget or you don't really know which axis you're meant to be rotating on, if you rotate it slightly, you can see which one is changing. So here I want to go 90, and it changes it to be 90 degrees, and it's overhanging now on this side. So that can be a really, really handy way of just quickly rotating things and being accurate with it as well. Okay, so at the moment I'm kind of not liking, I think that it looks a bit unrealistic to me. I think that this face probably does come out a bit more. I'm going to just move that a little bit over. I mean, there is the supports, but I feel like it's difficult for the concept, especially that I haven't done it myself. And just to mention, it does make it a lot simpler if you have done a concept before. I'm going to leave it as that just now. But it does make it simpler when you do your own concepts, even just a basic one, just so you at least know what you're mocking up in the scene. Okay, so from here I would say, yeah, it kind of looks like that. I'm going to move this over here a bit. I'm going to give it some overhang there a little bit, 'cause just the shadows are going to be much nicer, and you'll see that when we render it out. I'm also going to make it a little higher, and I'm going to switch my grid back on so I know what I'm doing. Show, grid. And then once again, I'm going to duplicate this one, because it's going to line up with the one on top. So Control D, and then line it up. It looks to me like it's directly above on the concept, but because you've done the concept, it means that you can also make changes and you'll see them in real time. You can actually see it if it's working or not. I mean, if this is looking unbalanced, then you can go in yourself and change it, rather than, like, I mean, when it's on 2D and you've only concepted it on paper, it can be really difficult to know if something actually would work. And a lot of the times when you come to do this sort of thing in 3D, you realize, oh, it wouldn't work very well actually. So that's another way why this can be very, very useful. Okay, now I think there's a little tower on top of these, so I'm just going to quickly mock one up. Control D. And I'm going to non-uniform scale that. Because it's kind of like a cuboid, but I mean everything's kind of man-made, so it might not be a cube. Okay, looks a bit like this. I'm going to offset this a little bit as well. Have it like that. Make sure you're rotating it around and you're looking at it from all angles as well. Make sure your lines are not hovering above. If you have it something like this, right now, I may not have realized that, oh, see, here's a good example. I've not realized that this isn't sitting on. It's going to create a strange shadow when we come to render it. So make sure that it's either on or, you know, you can put it going through because it's only cuboids and cubes. So it's pretty simple. There we go. Okay. Now we're going to use some of the tools on our toolbar. So this one is called the edge loop, and it can be an absolute godsend if you want to add divisions in. I think for this one actually we're going to use extrude. Extrude is another very useful one though. Okay, so now we're going to extrude the top part. So select the face that you want to extrude and then hit this button, extrude. And then from here you want to press R, select the face R, and I'm going to extrude it because there's a bit of a hang on the okay, so it's about, you know, maybe that. If it's a cuboid, it's not going to, you're not going to be able to do it uniform. You're going to have to scale it differently, okay? Do you see? But because it's pretty much near a cube, I can kind of just do it like this way. And then W, move tool, and you want to press G, and G will be extrude again because it was the last tool selected. G, W, select it up, and see we've got an overhang now on the building, and that's going to create a nice shadow. So that's one of the simple constructions here. I may add the detailing in. I think it would be beneficial. I just don't know if I'll have time for this video, otherwise this video is going to become too lengthy. But I'll continue on with this. So there's an overhang. It looks kind of like a petrol station sort of thing. And there's an overhang that comes over here with pillars coming down. So we're going to create that. And it looks to me like there's an... Okay, there's like an overhang. I'll show you what I'm looking at. There's like an overhang here, it seems, and then we would need to extrude out to create this. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to be using this tool, the edge loop tool. Select that, left click and drag, and as you can see you can drag it up and down and around here, and it goes all the way around. So I'm going to say I think it's going to be about that. And then to confirm that, and so you don't click another one by accident like that, press Ctrl Z if you have. And then because my cursor is still like this, it's still active. Press the select tool and that confirms your selection. So from here I want to hold right click face. And now I'm back to being able to select faces. And now I want to select all the ones along here, and instead of rotating around and selecting them all, there's an easier way of doing this. So I want to press spacebar and go to my front view. And you can see that this is selected. I'm going to go into 4, which is wireframe, and you can see better my selections. So I'm going to select all of this. I'll draw a box around this. Make sure you don't select the top. Make sure you're just selecting this strip, because that's what we want to extrude. And then back to our perspective view, and we've got all those selected. And then we're going to press extrude. And I'm going to non-uniform scale this. So we're getting a bit of an overhang. Once you get the hang of this, you'll be able to mock these up so fast. And you'll be able to do more details, things like doors and windows, and just extrude them in, you know. In fact, let's go ahead and do that, just so I can show you how you would. Edge loop. Can be a simple way of doing it. It's not the best way for optimization, but don't worry about that too much. But don't get too tangled in edge loops, or it can become disastrous, and it can become a bit of a nightmare when you try and figure out where you are, and you have to go ahead and delete some. So I'm going to say there's windows here. I'm going to Control Z again, otherwise it won't let me select on here. And now I can reselect. Okay, that looks that looks, you know, reasonable enough. Okay, I'm gonna get an edge loop around here. There seems to be a window there. Edge loop around here. Confirm. Right click face, hold face, select the face, then shift select this one. And now you want to go extrude. Press W. Extrude it in. And now you've created some very simple windows, and they're going to create a nice drop down shadow, which is then going to make it easier for us to understand and concept that area. And you can go ahead and you can do that on all of these. Another way, if you ever do get too caught up with the edge loops, if you go to edge, you can select edge loops. If you double left click, you can select the whole edge there. And we could go ahead and delete that. I'm just going to leave them because, you know, it's more about speed than anything for this. But if it does become too complex, I'll just show you a little trick. So you would select the edge loop, and it's not selected these ones. Press delete, and you'll see that they've deleted. However, if you hold down right click vertex, you can see the verts have been left. And this is a problem for us. So what you can do is select over that object, create a box, select all of them, press delete whilst having all the verts selected, and it's going to delete those ones. It's going to come up with a warning and say, oh, we can't delete some because they're along border edges and things like this. But it deletes the ones that aren't being used, really, that aren't needed. Make sure you don't do this on a flat plane though, because it'll delete the edge verts, because it'll think none of them are needed. So just be careful if you're doing anything on a flat plane, be careful when you do that. And you would have to select them more like this. Draw a box around like that and then delete. Okay? But I'm going to leave those edge loops in. I'm going to Control Z. But it's a very handy thing to know, so please remember that one. Okay, so back to this. Hold right click, face, extrude. There we are. W to the move tool. I can't work out if it just comes straight across or if it goes in. You know, I'm gonna show you something else. I'll create another edge loop here, because I think you can become more complex when you go into 3D and you do these sorts of things. So create an edge loop here. You've got an edge loop going all around. Confirm, then face, delete these faces. And now you're going to create a better shadow. Maybe there's a door under here or something. Maybe there's a window here. But we've got this hole here now. So how do we patch that up? Well, we could go edge, edge, and then extrude them down, because you can extrude from edges. Or there's a much simpler way. If you go to this tool, this tool, and you can select the edges that create this. It's going to know that we just want to create a polygon here. So if you select this one, and then you see it suggests where you want the other edge to go. So select the one underneath, and it's created a face there. And if you want to select more than one, press G, and it'll confirm it, and then it'll go on to the next one. And then we can do the same. And then I'm going to press the selection tool again, so that it confirms my selection, because I don't want to do another one. And that's it there. You'll notice that it's created this shadow here. And that's because with this tool, it likes to often soften the edge that you see. So we're gonna add another tool to our set actually just now. So hold right click object mode, and you'll see it's almost as though the edge isn't there. It looks like it's trying to soften the edge, so it looks more curved. We want to go to, make sure you're in polygons, normals, and you want to go to soften edge, but Control Shift left click, add that onto your scene, and also harden edge, Control Shift left click. I'm just going to add a couple of other things on here that we will use later in case you're having problems with your models. We want to go to reverse. So we want to go to display, polygons, face normals, but I'm going to add that to my toolbar, my shelf as well. Control-Shift, left-click. And as you can see, face normals is what that stands for. So I'm just going to rearrange these a little bit. I'm going to put this before, I'm going to hold down middle mouse button, put this before my soften edge, harden edge, and then reversing the normals. So for this, I'm going to select this, and I want, you know, I want also the whole model to be hard edge, not just specific sections, so I can select the whole model. If not, I could select just the faces I want or the edges I want. And I'm going to click this button to then harden the all the edges so they're more angular. And you'll see how that's changed back to how it was. Don't worry, you'll pick these things up very easily if you do this often. And it's very simple things that you need to do. Okay, so I'm going to quickly mock up the rest of the scene now. And then when we come across a new tool, I will explain how to do it. The next part is going to be, there's a pillar that comes down in the center here. So I'm going to create a new cuboid. Okay. Select verts, W. It doesn't matter if it's intersecting, that's fine. It's maybe a little bit large. Verts. Make sure it's on the edge. We can snap that. If we hold down X, we can snap this to the grid. So if you hold down X, it means it's snapping to the grid. So hold X, and then just drag it down. You see how that's snapping to my grid? So that can be a very handy tool as well. Okay, now then there's like a base along the bottom. So I'm going to create a new cuboid again. Just draw it out. Draw it out, the height there. That looks fine, it'll already be on the grid. I'm going to just uniform that, scale that in a bit. So it looks like it's some form of gas station or some petrol station even. Move that into the middle a bit. And it looks like there's kind of gangplank across here. I'm going to move these in slightly because I think I've put them too far out. Okay. Yeah, okay. I'm going to duplicate this because it's going to make, I'm going to duplicate this whole thing and it's going to make it easier for me for the next one, because as you can see, there's the ones that are on this side and they mimic they're very similar to this. It's going to be very easy for me to just control those if I just duplicate these. So Control D after you, oh crap, no. Okay, so select those, Control D, W. You can move those across. And they're about, I mean, there's a road down the middle. Okay. Now I'm just going to quickly go over some things here. I'll leave this with its overhang. I think it's going to create a nice shadow, and I think that would look good. This over a bit. It looks a bit smaller. This over here. Select the verts. There is an overhang. This, select the verts. More of an overhang like that, yeah. Like this. It's looking a bit unstable. Then there's another one that's like this. It's much smaller. And because we can only see this one from one view, we'll just have to guess it from this. So I'm just gonna make these a little bit smaller. Move this in a bit. Okay. Yeah, that looks about right. Okay. And then this top one looks like it's I don't know. It might be smaller. I don't know. Right, and then go to the other view, F, to find it. Focus it. Pull it down. And there seems to be like a railing across here. You could create that if you wanted. It's one of those details that probably is just better to do in Photoshop. Especially that concepting is supposed to be such a quick thing. And I'm going to select this face. I'm going to delete these. I'm gonna go edge, double click, delete those. Okay, I'm not gonna do that yet. I'm gonna create my polygon here first. So we'll go back up to here, pen to polygon, select that, select here and here, press enter. Edge, select the edge, delete. And I want to delete those verts, make sure you always do that. You're gonna get some weird deformations. And you can select the ground planes and delete those. I often do because I find it gets a bit complex with the edge loops. It gets a bit more harder the more complex your objects get, that when you have them in wireframe, you may end up selecting verts that you don't need to be selecting that are, you know, maybe across this way. They just can create some problems, but I'm going to leave them for just now because the main thing I want to focus on is speed for this. So once this is done, okay, we want now a platform from, okay, it looks a bit off because it looks like the platform's supposed to go from here down to here, but I don't think that would really work. I'm gonna lower this and see if we can make a shallower kind of dip. Okay, now I'm just gonna select center pivot. There we go. G, center pivot, G, G, G. But you can select them all, G. You can do the same. Okay. We'll select those and move them all down. Yeah, they look okay there. Okay. I'm going to duplicate this because it's just here and it's already quite flat. Control D. Extrude this out. It looks like where the players are going to kind of run across to get between the buildings. Not going to make it too long. Looks like it's the kind of thing that okay. I'm just going to select the verts and I'm just going to move these down. That's not going to matter too much to me. I can't really work out how this is connected, so I'm just going to kind of wing it. Hopefully that's okay. I think it's a bit long this way. Let's move the whole thing over a bit as well. I'm going to rotate this around. I want to get rid of these windows, actually. Yeah, select face, delete, delete. Okay. I'm going to go into my side view, F. Hover over it. Okay, no. Select like that, and then shift select like that, and then you should be left with those. Just check it just to make sure. Delete. I then want to pen to polygon again. Very useful tool. G. Enter. Edge. Delete these edges. Don't need them. To then see how they're selecting. If I want to select this edge, I'm going to need to delete the verts first. This is why it's so important to delete the verts that you don't need. Go back to edge. Delete. Delete. Do the same. Okay, and now there's no windows on that side. Brilliant. So hopefully now it looks like a bit of a different building. And then there seems to be another kind of one of these buildings back here. I'm going to select this one and I'm just going to copy it. I think I'm going to, okay, let's merge this. Let's combine these. Combine, center pivot, Control D, and I'm going to rotate the whole thing in my Y axis. So rotate Y. Let's go just 270. A lot of people go like minus 180 instead of writing 270, but I don't really know why they do that, to be honest. Okay. So that looks okay, and at least it mixes it up a bit. I know it's not exactly like this, but you can get an idea of then you can create a new set of towers here. And there seems to be like a gangplank across here as well. So I'm going to create a new one from here probably. Control D, move that over. Let's focus in on that. zoom out a wee bit. I'm gonna make this thinner. And I think it either goes to like a door on this side or the upper one, but I'm not entirely sure. So I'm just gonna assume they kind of go across like this. Select the verts. You can be more accurate. Just check that looks, does that look alright? Move it over slightly. Okay, cool. And I'm just going to quickly mock up. There seems to be a couple of barrels down here. Show you the concept again. A couple of barrels down here, and then a signpost here. So we're just going to quickly mock those up too. Oh, so I selected the cylinder tool that was here, and you just drag it on the ground just like the cubes again, and pull it up. Now mine is set to, if you remember from the last lesson, you go to, if you haven't got it already open, go to channel box, inputs, poly cylinder 1. If you go into here, you'll see that there's already subdivision axis of 20, because that's what my standard one is on. We can change that if we want. I'm going to have it less, 12. It just doesn't matter. But at the same time, it doesn't matter because this isn't going into a game. This is just a concept. So you can have it pretty much as high poly as you want, but just as long as you remember that it's going to take longer to render out and things. So I'm going to Control-Z that, leave it as 20. And that looks good to me. And this is a good point to make as well. If we go to edges and we select the edges, to have them as a soften edge, as a barrel would always, of course, it wouldn't have any hard edges around the center. So hard to soften edge. And there you can see, you know, it softens it. We can do it the other way, and you can see it becomes very angular. I think it was already on soften edge, to be honest. But this is why this tool is also very important. So just don't select the whole thing, because we want this edge to be hard edge. If we selected the whole thing and did that, you'd see how horrible that is with the shadows. So make sure, go to hard edge, edges, draw a box around just those ones, soften edge, object mode, and you can see the difference. So that looks a little large to me. This is a good point to show you how to change your pivot as well. So at the moment the pivot's in the middle. Press insert and you can move the pivot yourself. So I want to snap it to the grid. So I'm going to hold X whilst it's being in the insert mode, and it will snap to the base. And then before pressing insert again, I can press F, look at it and make sure it's on the center, and it is. And it's because I knew it was going to be on the center because it already was in the center of the object. Press insert, and that's on the base. So now when I scale this down, it's going to scale it on my grid, which makes it much simpler for me. So Control D, and I've got another one that seems to be next to it about here. Yeah, okay. And then we're just going to mock up the sign quickly. Just cuboid. And that's a terrible cuboid. Okay, I'm just going to mess around with this myself. F. The sign would be a bit thinner than that. Gonna move the face, it stays on the back there. Select the object. So I want to scale it this way and a bit like that. Because I'm assuming this is gonna state where it is. I'm going to move this in a bit because I feel like I'm going to combine those as well. Center pivot. And I feel like when we do composite it, it's probably going to be better when we angle it in a different way. But I'm going to leave it where it is just now before we set up our camera. And something that I've not gone over yet just now for the scene is how to save. So let's save our scene just now. File, save scene as, or a better way of doing this is File, Project, Set. And mine is already set in my University Works. So I'm going to go back to my documents, and I know where this is, Maya. So I'm going to call this, I'm just going to set it on tutorials. Just set the directory for where we want to save. Now when we save, and now when we open anything, it will come straight from that directory. So this makes it much simpler for you and less clicks when you're getting your textures and when you're rendering things out. It's going to go straight to that directory. So now File, Save, Scene As. You see it's gone straight to my directory, Home Projects, Tutorials. And I'm going to go into Maya, and I'm going to call this Maya 2D Artists 01. Save. Okay, and now that's saved. Brilliant. So I think there's not going to be enough shadows in some of the places. I'm going to put some more of these barrels around because I think they're going to look pretty good. I also think like maybe you can separate these as well, by the way. Separate, and then make sure you center pivot them all. Center pivot, and now they've all got their center pivots back. So I'm going to go Control D, just select cube, cuboid even. Because I just know that this is going to be too direct. Let's make sure that's close to the grid. I think overlapping slightly. Yeah, that's nice. And it like as though it was like narrowing perhaps. I mean, maybe this is some other type of building. You want to make sure they look, you know, varied as possible, just from a cuboid kind of sense. Okay. Select these. You know, and you can kind of just go crazy with this. You can create some really interesting shapes, obviously, with very simple tools up here. Okay. So I'm also going to just create a couple of crates as well, because I assume this sort of landscape, it looks a bit barren, like there would be crates here. F, focus. Maybe like that. Oops. Object mode, make sure you're in object mode. And rotate in the Z axis, 90. Make sure that's on your grid. And already you can see it's kind of coming to life. And I mean, if you put these, a few up here, they're going to create some nice shadows, especially if you want them to look like buildings. Like, it looks as though there would be a door here, and that there's windows here and things. And you can quickly see that it's more of an in-depth environment than just cuboids. And I think even for you, for your own kind of thought process, it makes it a lot simpler and makes it easier for you to actually see how this environment will and concept will develop when you take it into Photoshop. So from that, I'm going to kind of leave it as that. I'm going to delete this one. I'm going to Control S, save it, or just File, Save Scene. And now we're going to, last thing, create a base. That's an important thing. Create a floor. Because when we do our ambient occlusion, we want to make sure that we've got the shadows bouncing off the bottom as well. An ambient occlusion just creates a very simple shadow, like a very natural sort of shadow that you get. So from that, I'm going to take off my grid now because it's kind of distracting me. Show, grid. And I'm thinking that's looking pretty good. So File, save that now. Okay, now we're going to set up our camera. And it looks to me like the camera's, you know, about this kind of area. So we want to go to Rendering. And then this button here, which is Add Camera. And then, because I can't see it on the scene, but it is added, just don't press anything, press F, and it should focus in on it. So there it is, it's in the center of our scene. And it's a bit small now, so I'm going to scale that up. I'm going to move it to roughly where we want to render the scene. So okay, that's great. Now I really want to name my camera so I don't get it mixed up with the one I'm currently looking through. So I'm up here in the channel box. As long as it's selected, it's called Camera 1. Instead I'm going to call it Render Cam, yeah. Render Cam 01. Okay? Now, if we have it selected, and I press spacebar, and then in this view, I'm not really using the top view just now, it's okay. In this view, I want to go Panels, Perspective, Render Cam. And now that's going to look through my camera I just created. So, from here, you'll probably wonder why we're not using the perspective camera that we already had here. It's just going to make it easier for me to move around and change things in this camera, but I still need another perspective camera that I need to set up with my correct focal length and other things. So I'm going to press 5 for this. So it seems just like the other one, and see we've got the grid on here. I want to take off the grid when I'm in this render view. So this is my render cam view, and then back to my perspective. So the first thing I kind of notice is it feels a bit, I don't know, static. So with my render cam selected as I'm in it, if it's not selected and you've selected something else, go View, Select Camera, and it selects the camera that you're currently looking through. So now I'm in the channel box, open up Attribute Editor, and you can select all the attributes of this camera. So my focal length is at 35. I'm gonna, I don't know, it just looks a bit boring. I'm gonna maybe go to like 25. So see already, it seems more dynamic. It seems more like a kind of game engine almost. Yeah, I quite like that. Especially from like maybe like a low perspective. And that's kind of how it is in the concept, and you're kind of like looking up at it. It's like almost like this, I'd say. You can see that that's going to create some nice shadows that you can detail on in further. Okay. Right. And I would also like to maybe... So from here I can rotate the camera as well. So I'm just focused in the perspective view and pressed E, and I want to go to my tool settings for the camera. But it's my tool settings for the rotate tool. So reset tool, and see it's on local now. So now it's going to rotate around the camera. When it was on world, it's selecting it with the world axes, which I really don't want because it's going to create some awkward movement. So reset tool, and it sets it back to local. Close that. So with this, I can get maybe something a bit more dynamic. So that looks kind of nice. Okay. So from rendering, I want to go back to my shelf. And then choose this little button. I'm going to close this for the camera just now. Make sure you're not scrolling too much in this, because we want to save the position that this camera's in. Go to this setting, render settings. And okay, that doesn't matter just now. But we want to eventually render in HD 1080. At the moment we're just going to set up the viewport so you can see it, so we can see how our composition is. So HD 1020 pixel aspect ratio, keep it ticked there, or you're going to get some funny things in Photoshop. Close. Select this button here, resolution gate, and you can see 1920 by 1080 is displayed. So this is what would be rendered if we did it this way. So from here we can compose our shot, whether we want it maybe a bit higher or a bit more dramatic. I think from the concept painting, oh crap, look what I've done. Ta-da! Okay, I think from the concept painting it looks more dramatic than anything, I'd say. I'd say maybe moving this. See, and we can just see how things are fitting together here. And now, see, I think the sign's a bit too far away. Which way am I moving that? Right. This is when perspective view is excellent. F. Back in here. And then if you have both of these open, you can kind of see how it's going to affect it. Make sure you're moving it with the arms. For me, it looks like this is going to be whatever the title of the scene is. I kind of, maybe even closer. This sort of thing. How's that? Yeah, that looks... I mean, it's maybe going to clip a bit. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Okay. So now that we've got the composition sorted, we can probably move on to rendering now, actually. So I'm going to Control S, save that. I'm going to select my camera, and ooh, my end's going a bit funny. Go down to display here in the when you have the channel box open, and you'll see here it's like Photoshop. You can create layers with different items. So I'm going to create a layer with my camera, so I don't move it. And I'm going to call this my cam. No, what did I call it? Render cam layer, or it won't save if you call it the same as this. Render cam layer. And now click this button, and that means you can't select it and you can't edit it. Select this one, and it's the same. But it's usually, it changes with the, depending on the object. Usually it would be geometric objects that you'd have in here. So I'm going to have it on the T. But be careful, because you can still move it if you're looking through it. So be wary of that. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just looking at the composition. I think that's going to be quite nice, that sort of thing. I want to move this slightly over. Okay. Right, that looks good to me. So again, Control S. Right, now we're going to render out our ambient occlusion layer to get the soft shadows. So I want to first go to Render, and this is our master layer. This is where everything is in. Select this, right click, select this, select Objects and Layer, and you'll see everything is highlighted suddenly. Press this, sorry, and it goes to a new layer, including all of these objects. So now we're on this layer. And we can, whatever changes we make to this will not affect the master layer. And we can do this however many times we want, but you only need to make this layer, okay? So with layer 1, double click it, and I'm going to call this AO. Right click, attributes. You don't need to have this selected anymore, by the way, okay? You just need to make sure you have that selected. Right click, attributes. And now you're in the attributes. So I'm going to go to presets, occlusion. And you'll notice everything's gone black, but don't worry about that, okay? It's just only doing it in this layer. Your master layer is not affected. So you want to go to MIB AMB occlusion 1. And in here you can change the samples. I won't go too much into this other than telling you if it's low, it's grainy. If it's high, it takes longer to render, but it's much smoother. So I'm going to go for, I usually go for about 36-ish, but I think it's going to need more, 50. Okay. And as you can see, we can go back to the master layer and it's unaffected by this. So again, just to go through that, attributes, presets, occlusion, change that 50. Render settings. See, it's automatically on mental ray. If it's not, you have to go to window. If mental ray does not appear in this drop down, do this. Window, settings, preferences, plugin manager. And I have a lot that you don't need to know. It's this one, okay. Maya TOMR, mental ray, that is. Loaded, auto load, close. But mine's already selected. So we want to make sure we're rendering through the correct camera. Mine's in my perspective camera, which I'm currently looking through, which I don't want. I want it to render my render cam. I want it to render HD, pixel aspect ratio, make sure that's selected. Resolution 72, that's fine, we're not printing. Don't worry about this, we're going to save it when it renders out. So don't worry about file output just now. Go to quality. Production. Change the multi-pixel filtering to Langkos. And then everything else, yeah, everything else should be okay. Okay, so go back to your render layer here. And now select this button, render the current frame. It may, when I press, okay, I'll move it into here actually, okay. So I just pressed the middle one because I knew it was going to render on my other screen. So just so you can see it on my screen, from here, when you have this open, render by pressing this. Okay, so that's it rendered the AO. I think it's not taken on board that I've put 50 though. So I'm going to have a look at that just now. Again, attributes, presets, occlusion, 50. And I'm going to render that again. It's rendering on my other monitor, I'm sorry. That looks much crisper now. Okay, and then there it is. And I'm getting a few little funny things, I think, here with my anti-aliasing. But for the purposes of this, it's okay, because it's just a concept. Like, things like that can be easily fixed. So because of where I set my project, I'm going straight into home projects, tutorials, and it wants to save it here, but I don't. I want to go to Maya, and then I want to go to new folder, concept renders. Then save this as a targa, so you save that the background is separate from the foreground. And because it supports alpha targas, okay? So you want to call this concept AO source 01 and save that. And we can leave that now. I'm going to save this image here so that we can then flick between it depending on our next shots. So just minimize this window now and press Ctrl S. Make sure you don't move this camera. Do not scroll now because you want to overlap these images. So just leave this area and back to perspective. Now I want to go back to my master layer because I'm done with the AO. Back to the master layer. This is going to be the more tricky part of what we're about to set up now. So just follow along. I'm not going to explain it too in depth, but once you've set up one of these scenes, you can concept in the scene constantly and you won't need to remember all of this. So the first thing you want to do is display render settings. Make sure on mental ray, remember if it's not there, window settings and preferences, plugin manager, and it's Maya TOMR, and load those. Okay, so from here, you want to make sure render cam, HD 1080. You may not want to do this just yet because it's going to take longer to render, but because of what we're doing, I think we don't really need to test too much. So anyway, we'll move on. Enable color management. I want this linear. I want this sRGB. And we're going to go for a linear workflow here, which I'm not going to go through and explain. Okay. Quality, production, I'm not going to change the anti-aliasing. I find sometimes Maya breaks when I do this with just my version. I don't know why, but sometimes all of the settings become strange, and it's not something I've done, it's just I just know it's Maya, and then I have to reload the whole scene, so I'm going to leave that, so don't worry too much about it. Indirect lighting, physical sun and sky, create. Okay, from here, just close this now, and I want to go down to, actually, you know what, I'm going to change the render settings just now, because I think it's going to be much simpler. Final gathering, make sure that's on, and have this about between 250 to probably 300, you can just, that's okay. Secondary diffuse bounces, let's go for 2. Final gathering quality, between 1 and 2. I'm going to go for 2, and close that. Okay, now you want to go to your Hypershade menu, which is where you create materials for your objects, and it's also where all your utilities are, which is these. So we're going to create a new tool again here. Window, rendering editors, Hypershade, Control-Shift left click, and I'm going to move this, you know, I'll leave it there actually, okay? So click this. And I'm getting some funny things here. Okay, go to Utilities, and you want to go to Maya Physical Sky. So going on to Maya Exposure, you want to see that the gain here is 0.2. So copy that value and go to Maya Physical Sky Graph Network and change the multiplier of that, Control V to 0.2. And it's just so, because we're going to disconnect it from the camera, this. So what I've done there is if you select any of these, if you hold right click, Graph Network, it's going to show what's connected to each of these. Don't worry too much about it. You don't need to know. But that's essentially it. So Maya Exposure is the thing that's already connected that Maya does when you do a linear workflow and you add a physical sun and sky. But we don't want that. We want to create our own so we get more accurate results. So from doing that, I'm gonna go to here, and there's some things I'm gonna change now before we disconnect from the camera. So haze, you want a little bit of haze. Just maybe like around 2 would be kind of good. And then the red-blue shift, like we have on the concept, if this is obviously a cooler kind of shade, and then this is obviously warmer. So to do so, the negative values will be in the blue range, positive values will be in the red. So I'm going to want to go for the red, and a little is quite a lot when it comes to this. So I'm just going to go for 0.2 for this. And we're going to disconnect it from the camera now. So if you just exit the Hypershade menu, I'm going to need to select this camera, make sure you don't move it, perspective view, select camera. Just in case, go back to your perspective view so you don't scroll in it. And if you scroll down to the bottom here, you want to go to mental ray, sorry, and see how it's connected the Maya Exposure Simple, that was the utility you saw. We don't want that connected. Break connection. Okay, and that's it. And this all seems kind of complex now, but it won't be. So I'm just going to render this out now for you. And we can see where we're currently at. Make sure you're in the right render view when you're doing this. Okay, so as you can see here, it's a much more kind of natural setting, almost. As you can probably tell, because we did the red-blue tint, well, we put it more into the positive, so we wanted a warmer shades. You can tell it's more yellow and reddish, the color of the boxes. So that can be really handy to know. It's also dulled down the background a bit to be a bit more subtle. So at the moment it looks very similar to this one. We can change the background, however. of which I'll show you how to do. Make sure you don't scroll the camera, go to perspective, back to our hypershade menu. Maya's being very slow today for me. Okay, utilities. Maya physical sky. And you want to go to graph network just so we can see it here. And you move around with the holding Alt and middle mouse button, and you pan around just like in the 3D view. And you can zoom in again just as you would in the 3D view. But that doesn't matter too much. So because we've got this selected, I will minimize this. And I've got it selected here. So I want to scroll down and go to use background. I then want to click on this checkered box, to which it's going to bring up what do I want to be selected in the background. Now I don't want my own file, well I do want my own file, but I need it connected to something quite specific first. So you want to locate first, type into here, MIB, oh crap, okay, in mental ray, sorry, make sure you've got this selected, MIB, look up, and I can see it here, look up background. And see it's asking what texture I want to put in here. And we're going to quickly make our own texture just now, so Control S, and I'm just going to minimize Maya, and I'm going to go into Photoshop. Okay, File, New, make sure it's a square texture. I'm going to go for pixels. 1024 by 1024, 72, RGB 8-bit. And from this, it goes from red to yellow. So I'm just going to do a really simple gradient. Obviously, you can go much more in depth with this. Let's go for a kind of, yeah, it looks almost pinky. Go quite deep for the top of the sky, and I think it kind of does wash out a bit, and then it's too yellow. It's kind of a lighter yellow. Yeah, it kind of feels like that for me. Okay, so I'm just going to draw this down the page. I'm going to want a little... no, I know how Maya works, so I know that this, you won't see too much of this, I think. Okay, so I'm going to leave it as that. File, Save As, Home Projects, Tutorials, okay. Just because I'm going to put it in my concept renders, I'm just going to put it, I'm not going to bother saving as a Photoshop file. I'm going to save as a Targa, as these give better quality results. And I'm going to call this BG Red 01. And I want to save it as a 24-bit, because there's no alpha. If it's 32-bit, it would show alpha, but we don't have any, so it's just going to waste memory. So 24-bit. And I'm just going to close that. Back into Maya, minimize this. MIB lookup background, that's the one we're in. Remember, if you don't know how to get to, if you've clicked away from it, they're here. It's connected to the Maya physical sky, so you can always get back to it this way in utilities. Texture. Here we go. Tutorials, home projects. Oh, sorry about that. BG Red 01. Okay, and you won't see anything until we render it. So let's render that now. Where is my render view? Okay, so this is it with the background, and obviously it looks like we could have gone a little bit darker. I think, yeah. I mean, you can mess around with it yourself. That'll do for me though. And obviously it's kind of at the stage where, you know, taking this into Photoshop and changing the gamma on this is not gonna, you know, it's probably gonna take a lot less time than us messing around with it in Maya. So at this stage I think, oh, this is pretty good, you know, I quite like this. I'll probably save this. So, concept renders, concept AO source, but we want to call this one, let's call this one color, concept color source. And I'm going to show you one more quick thing that's incredibly useful. Make sure you go out of that and back to perspective view. If I wanted to color any of these, I notice in the concept that these look a bit grey, but I don't know if it's just because of the light or something else, but perhaps these are more of like a beige color or like a kind of dark stony color, or maybe this sign is red, or maybe you want these crates, these barrels to be very dark grey. To actually select colors for that, I'm going to separate that and use that as an example, center pivot. Okay, I want this sign to be, I really want it to contrast with the sky actually. I'm going to make it green. So I want to put a color on this. So we're going to be using the hypershade menu. Go back to materials and we'll make a new material from here. But the quickest way to do this is hold down right click, and you know this menu already. Scroll down like whilst holding assign new material. If you want it shiny and you want it to reflect surfaces, I'm not going to go into the details of how to set them up, but it's not difficult. It's just changing numbers. You want Blinn. But I just want solid block colors for these because that's what I'm going to be basing my concept on when I take it into Photoshop. So I'm going to go to Lambert and I'm going to call this Sign Matte 01. And then I'm just going to change the color and that's it. So I want a kind of darker green, yeah. And this I think would be wood. So I'm going to assign a new material, Lambert, and I'm going to call it wood because maybe I would use it for, you know, the crates or something as well. It's only going to be block colors. I just need to get the block colors in. Yeah, that looks fine. You know, and you can go ahead and assign this to these two. Assign existing material, wood matte. I want these to be dark grey, select them all. Assign new material, Lambert, barrel matte 01. Make them a dark grey. I want this building to be a beige, assign new material, Lambert. I'm just going to call it beige matte 01. Kind of light, more like a stony kind of color, some more that kind of. And I'm going to do this for a couple of other buildings too. Oh, I'm going to separate these, control, center pivot, sorry. So I'm just going to select a couple of random ones of these that maybe would also share this material, beige matte. These ones I want to be darker brown maybe. Assign new material, Lambert, stone brown matte. My naming system's already gone out the window. Let's go, it would be near to that, but I want it more like darker kind of shade. Select this one as well. Stone brown. Maybe these ones a lighter, I don't know. Assign new material, Lambert. Stone grey, I don't know, matte 01. And I want a little bit of colour in there though. Let's go for more like a yellow. Yeah, that looks significantly different. Okay. What did I call that? I called that grey. Oh god. Right. Call this one. Let's just call it dark. Where was the stone? No. Barrel matte. Yeah. This one. stone grey, whatever. And then this was kind of a sandy color, so maybe the beige one. Yeah, okay. Okay, and you can see how quickly that was to just bring that alive. I'm also going to make these gangplanks kind of a dark, the wood color. Maybe they're more wooden. And just quickly you can see, oh, I've already got the base colors in. When you concept over this, you can just color pick much easier. Obviously, you can take a lot more time over this. So let's render this out, make sure it's all the right settings again. Just like to double check sometimes, because sometimes it likes to change. Production, Gauss, it's right. Indirect lighting, final gather, make sure that's on. That was worrying. Filter 2. Render cam HD. Okay, let's render that out. As you can see, that's really come alive just by adding those colors. You can really then distinguish which elements are different, and as an artist it's going to make it much more simpler for you when you go in and change these things. Or you can see, even when you're concepting it in 3D, how things will draw more attention, like this sign, or if you don't want them to draw attention, maybe make it another color, rather than having to worry about it in Photoshop. It can make things much, much simpler. So I'm going to save this out. So I'm going to call this color source 2. Okay. So with the AO, you've got the lighter, the kind of the softer shadows that you get, and then with the Maya sun and sky, it's a different kind of effect. One thing I didn't show you actually is that you can change the direction of the sun. Let's go into your render settings, and you want to press this button here. Do not delete the sun and sky. You do not want to go through the process again. Close. Maya physical sky, sun direction, and where is that? Hypershade, utilities, Maya physical sun, graph network. Where is that? It's going to be, was this it? Here you are. F. You can make this bigger. You can move it to somewhere that is much more simpler to manage. And all that it determines is the direction that the sun is coming down. So at the moment, it's coming down, it's quite direct. We can have it come down at a different angle just by changing a few simple things. So just from that, the shadows are going to come down this way now. So that gives it a look like it's much later in the day now. And you can save that out as well if you like, and then overlay that. I'll save it out just so you can see the difference. Source 3 even. And then Targa, remember you can cut this out much simpler when you're in Photoshop, so I'm just going to show you that. I'm going to save this scene and close it because we don't need any more. Go into Photoshop. File open. Concept AO source. I'm going to open them all up for you to look at. So this is the last one we rendered out, where we changed the direction of the sun. And you see this one's, it's much more direct down, so you know it feels quite a bit like, I don't know, it feels flat. This one, it's much more dynamic. I mean, you can obviously change it so you can have it at a different angle yourself. So I prefer this one, I'd say. And then this one is without the color, and you can see how much the color adds. It does change a lot. It just depends how you want to work though. I mean, maybe you like to work in grayscale. I think it adds so much more. So right here's the AO, and you see there is the alpha channel on it. If you go to channels in Photoshop, in case you don't know, you can see, and that's it cut out. And then the same, sorry, not the same with this one, but Control A, copy, Control Shift V, and it's on top, and now you can cut those out very simply and overlay them. So you've got your AO layer, and you can multiply on top, and then you can kind of, you know, you can make it more subtle or do whatever, and it just, you get much more subtle shadows this way. And you can see the kind of difference this adds. And then in Photoshop, obviously, then you can finish your concept and it will work much better. So thank you for watching this series, and I hope it's useful, and if you have any questions, just contact me. Okay, thanks.